Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast, Creativity and Fulfillment in Academia. I'm Sarah Bunin-Benor. In each episode, my co-host Mira Sukharov and I speak to fellow scholars and other experts about how to live a good academic life. Today, I'll be interviewing Alison Miller. Alison is founder and director of the Academic Writers Space, an online co-working community for graduate students and academic writers to get real work done in a supportive and nurturing environment. Alison has a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Illinois at Chicago. She's the author of Finish Your Dissertation Once and for All: How to Overcome Psychological Barriers, Get Results, and Move On with Your Life. Alison, welcome to the Peer Review Podcast.
I'm really glad to be here. It's not every day that I get to be on a podcast that is about what's really near and dear to my heart.
Well, I'm so glad we found you because your own academic journey and your businesses that you've started are very relevant to the kind of thing that our listeners are looking for. So let's start with your own academic journey. Tell us about your programs that you did, what schools you went to, and how you got interested in clinical psychology.
Well, I had a feeling starting in about seventh grade as I watched all the dynamics that unfolded between peers, and a lot of it seemed to me completely unnecessary at the time of like, or we could not make fun of people in the hallway, or we could not gossip and like, or we could just not be so cliquish and act superior. And just sort of started to think maybe I'm interested in psychology. I don't even know how I knew what that was at the time, but I had some idea that there were people who did therapy, and that might be something I'd want to do. I ended up going to Cornell as an undergraduate and I majored in psychology. And my very last semester as a senior, I took a class with just a wonderful human being who's since passed on. And he was like a psychotherapy class. And his bedside manner and his whole way of being was just, okay, I'm going to go get a PhD in clinical psychology. So I ended up with the good fortune of a friend from Cornell getting a job in Chicago because I didn't really have any research experience. So I graduated, drove to a city I'd never been to, and went and moved to Chicago for this research job, working for somebody named Martin Harrow, who was at the University of Illinois at Chicago. It was a longitudinal study looking at all kinds of outcomes for folks who were experiencing different kinds of mental illness. And then I ended up in grad school at University of Illinois at Chicago. And in many ways, it was a very good experience. And in many ways, it really could have been so much better. I had a wonderful advisor, and I was able to kind of push the boundary and do research that I wanted to focus on that nobody was focusing on in the department, and use a methodology that wasn't being really used at the time, qualitative work. So in that sense, it was like a really cool experience. And the research I did was really meaningful to me. But the overall experience of being a grad student, I just looked around all the time and I had this feeling of like, I thought you guys were psychologists. It was very confusing to me, the kind of culture and the atmosphere and some of the ongoings between students and faculty, and the just utter abuse of power sometimes, or just lack of awareness of what it's like to be a vulnerable graduate student. And I found it very confusing how they couldn't, for example, ever embody their own teaching. Like I felt like there was a disconnect. There just was this environment that didn't feel particularly nurturing or cognizant of just how vulnerable you feel as a graduate student. The
Mm.
moment grad school started, I was like, uh-oh, like I had like a major imposter syndrome kick in. So it was a challenging journey for me. The first, 2.5 years, I was really sure they had made a mistake letting me in the program. And meanwhile, like I'd actually earned a fellowship coming into the program. Like the program viewed me as like a star. And I thought it was like a giant charades that I was articulate. So I could trick people into thinking I was smart. So it was tough. I was a serious procrastinator.
Mm.
Did some personal growth work during, some like time and I did a lot of personal growth work, different kinds of things and therapy. And um when I got to my dissertation, well, at the end of my master's, I started implementing some changes, which helped. I kind of turned over a new leaf with my dissertation and decided I was going to approach it in a much more systematic way. And I didn't have the language at the time for what I was doing, but I was really trying to figure out how to create a workable path to doing work that was hard and made me feel really vulnerable. How was I going to show up and take action in the presence of the discomfort that I couldn't make go away? And that realization, for me, that it wasn't really the work that I was avoiding, it was the thoughts and feelings and the sensations in the body that I was avoiding. And that kind of insight is why I decided, there's like there's got to be a way that I can help people. And I started showing people in my program what I was doing because people commented like, "Where's all the drama? How'd you write your dissertation proposal that quickly?" And I was like, "Oh, well, this is what I'm doing." And I started showing people, and a friend, Mary, said to me, "That's a business. That's a service. People need that. People are struggling with their dissertations all over the world. Where if someone would come in and just teach them this like project management approach and this sort of way of relating to the internal dialogue in a somewhat from different perspectives, because we were trained as cognitive behavioral therapists in my program, so I had some affinity toward helping people kind of unwind those patterns of thinking, but I also was really all about planning and structure. And again, I didn't have the language for it, but really what I was discovering is academic writers need an infrastructure, and they don't teach you this in graduate school. And that's a big part of what I now do as a coach. So I started a business in 2000 called The Dissertation Coach. That was a coaching consulting company. Well, it still exists. I sold it. So I sold it to the wonderful Jessica Parker, who now owns the Dissertation Coach. That company has an incredible team of people that actually partner in an ethical way with graduate students, either from a consulting, more of a technical assistance point of view, developmental point of view, or from more of a coaching, more psychological, more structure point of view. So I ran that business for about 24 years before I sold it. And out of that came the academic writer space. So the pandemic hit, we responded as an organization to our clients by offering 5 free co-working sessions a week. And very quickly, I realized that facilitating co-working sessions felt much more natural and aligned and alive for me than one-on-one coaching. Which, for me, doing one-on-one work, I always felt like I'm in the right house, but the wrong room, kind of, especially, even though I do like doing some one-on-one work, but co-working where we get together on Zoom as a community and we show up to work on our own work, but we do that while we're accompanied by others on Zoom in a environment that's kind, an environment that is inviting you to learn how to work in ways that really work. They produce results and they honor your humanity. You're working in a way where productivity and well-being can coexist. So I think that everything I did over all these years was pointing me in the direction of fundamentally, at the heart of it, that is what I want to practice in my own life and discover how to embody. How do I live a life where productivity and well-being coexist? Because my model of productivity is productivity over well-being. I will just work and 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 ignore my own like humanity, ignore my body. So I think for a lot of academics, we've gotten very disconnected, from ourselves because any kind of fear-based environment, which academia can be a very scary environment, we tend to move into more of a survival mode. But I feel like it's really harmful. And so, yeah, so that's kind of where it's taken me is like, I'm here to nurture and support academic writers and let them know there is another way to engage with your work that's just so much more satisfying. And you're going to be physically and psychologically so much better off. You're going to do better work. Your relationships are going to be better, but it takes time to learn. It's an unwinding of a lot of habits and a lot of kind of programming that we've received and messaging we've received to
Mm,
learn how to work in a way that's really self-honoring.
mm.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And it really aligns with a lot of the previous interviews we've done. And actually, when I interviewed Mira, she used a phrase that I've been thinking about a lot since then, the absent-bodied professor. We think of the absent-minded professor, but often professors are just living in their minds and not worrying about their corporeal concerns, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Well-being over productivity, and or the two of them coexisting. I like that.
Yeah, that there's a beautiful way that they can coexist together, I think for all of us.
Yeah. So you mentioned that grad students need an infrastructure, and you
Yes.
provide that in the academic writers space. Is there
Yes.
another way that grad students can get infrastructure without, like, let's say they don't want to work with other grad students, they just want to work on their own? What kind of coaching would you give them about creating their own infrastructure?
Well, I think one of the most essential parts of the infrastructure for everybody is planning and learning how to plan. And that's a learned skill, and it's also a practice that if you stop planning, you will get rusty at planning. So, the reason planning is so important is that every single piece of work that you need to do, so like I'm holding up this little pad of paper here. Let's just pretend this pad of paper here represents a piece of work that I'm doing. This piece of work, in order for it to be progressed and then eventually completed, needs me, the human, to come and show up and actually be present, alert, engaged. It needs me to direct my attention and energy to the actual work for it to get done. And that really being successful with your academic work, your writing, your research, what needs to happen is there need to be repeated occasions of you showing up and being present with a narrow band of activity. Okay, so here I'm holding up a bunch of different colors of notebooks. A lot of times we are moving through our day where we've got like, oh, I've got to send these emails and I need to finish this, report. And what about that section I was working on? And wait, I got to check that data. And wait, did I pay my rent? There's just so many open tabs in our brain, and what's happening is all day long, our attention and energy are being spread over this very large surface area of competing tasks where we are lacking clarity in relationship to an upcoming pocket of time. Let's say you use the Pomodoro technique. This is an infrastructure piece if you're working alone. Pomodoro, Italian for tomato, you're working in 25-minute increments with a 5-minute break in between. You can obviously change those time frames. But let's say you're showing up, you've got 25 minutes. If I show up to this and this and this and this and this and all these different things, I'm going to be switch tasking and scattered and all over the place. And I'm going to end my day feeling like I worked all day long, but I got nothing done.
Totally. I often feel that way. And
Yes.
I feel like I've gotten better about single tasking, but
Single
it's
tasking.
hard when you have so many things, so many
Yes.
deadlines and so many bills to pay or other things besides your academic work. It's hard to compartmentalize.
100%. So we need an infrastructure. We need planning. We need something. One of the components, well, I'll talk about in a moment, is can be community. But you need to separate your tasks from each other. In an elementary school, if the kindergartner teacher needs her classroom of children to travel from the classroom to the auditorium, the very first thing that that teacher is going to do is she's going to get them into a single file line. It's actually unsafe and inefficient to move a group of 5-year-olds through a school in just like it'd be chaos, right? We move into our tasks like it's a sea of kindergartners. We need to get our tasks into a single file line. What's first is first, right? What's next is next. We are separating our tasks from each other so that they're their own things. Then we're seeking to come in and practice lining up our energy. Like here's a little thing we use. Like this is a list of black lines on a piece of paper with little boxes to check next to them. Come up with a list of monotasks, separated out pieces of things. This is not always possible with certain aspects of academic work, but where it is, breaking things into small pieces. If you don't know how to do this, have someone else sit with you and help you do it because it's a learnable skill. You just need to find someone. Some people have more of a natural instinct about how to do it. That's why you hire coaches, by the way, to teach you how to do this. Because the fundamental way you learn to do it is by doing it day after day, week after week. It's through practice. You'll figure out, break things down. And then your job is to show up and try to make quality contact with the work. You and the work are in contact. Your attention isn't divided off into all the other things that are competing. You've chosen to surrender your attention energy to anything but the thing that's next on the list. It's almost like it's a right relationship with the work. I've picked something very, very narrow. It's like what you're doing is if you've got 1,000 tasks on the mainland, you're going to pick one and the two of you are going to go off on an island. And when that is done, you get to cross it off the list and feel the deep satisfaction comes from, I said I was going to do it. I picked up my attention and energy and I did it. That's so deeply satisfying.
Oh my gosh, totally. I often feel like I had a good productive day if I am more focused. And
Yes.
that's the sign of a successful working day for me.
And the only way for most of us, especially if we have a lot going on, that we are going to be able to pick up our energy and attention and direct it in a meaningful way so that we and the work are coming into like contact. You have to have an infrastructure so that you can be positioned that way in relationship to the work. That takes something. It takes a commitment to stepping out of the doing of the work and planning the work. And for all of you who are listening to this, you've got to be on the lookout. There's a voice in most of our heads that will say, you know what? Don't take the time to plan. Just get the work done. When you hear that, that is, in a sense, it's a self-sabotage because it's impossible to use our brains. And actually, it's not a good use of our cognitive resources, frankly, to use our brain to track and figure out when we're doing what. We've got to get it outside of us so that when I show up to work, there's not ambiguity about what direction I'm going in. It's like you wouldn't drive your car to the grocery store if someone had thrown a bucket of mud over the windshield. But that's what we do. We move into our work. We really don't know what we're working on. By the way, planning time equals work time. You don't feel guilty about it. You're like, yes, this I'm building an infrastructure for myself so that as much as possible, I show up to the desk with clarity about what I'm doing and in some sense, clarity about what you're doing is also clarity about what you are not doing. So for many people, when they're doing this early on, actually, this could be a good long-term strategy. You write down what you're doing, and then when you show up to the desk, you get real about what are you not doing. I'm not getting on my phone. I'm not checking my email. I'm not working on that other project that I thought about in the middle of the night last night. I'm doing this. You start to work in a more systematic, more orderly, more logical way. Yeah, you're never going to follow your plan perfectly. And sometimes things blow up. But with the commitment to come back and plan, and that's actually a really important thing that we teach in our co-working community is how do you actually plan? And we teach planning as a practice. It's something we have to decide that we're going to be dedicated and devoted to in order to be able to work in a way where productivity and well-being can coexist.
So I think that's great, and I hope that all of our listeners make changes to get toward that goal. One question I have about it is what happens when a new deadline arises that you didn't expect? So, for example, I today was planning to go through the proofs of one article, and then I got a request to do something else that was more time sensitive. And so I switched to that after
Yeah.
working on the proofs for maybe an hour. And I think I probably wasn't aligned with what you're recommending. My single file line got a little out of order.
Yes.
And so what's your take on that, on being flexible when new things arrive?
Yeah. What I choose is important today might be altered by new information I get. And that's very much the case for people in academia. I think the key thing is You're doing both. You're both sticking to your plan. There's a sense of like, I'm going to honor what I said I was going to do. At the same time, you're also living in reality. You're being honest about sometimes I have to pause and I have to actually reconfigure the plan because I have new information. So, in some ways, what I'm saying is that you're honoring your word either way. You're honoring your word either by saying, I'm just going to do what I said I was going to do. Or you're saying, wow, I said I was going to do this and now I have new information. Okay, let's pretend that you have two tasks. The one you were going to do, and B is the one that now you feel like you need to move to the front of the line. It's like turning to A and saying, hey, I know I said I committed to you. This other thing has come back. I'm going to work on for you an hour. I'm going to leave myself a little note, like a trail of breadcrumbs describing to me where I'm leaving off, and maybe even thinking, maybe writing a note about where to pick up. And I'm going to actually leave you. I'll be back to see how I'm honoring it. And now I'm choosing the other thing. So it's that commitment to, we don't just well, there's no way to stop doing what I'm about to say, but it's possible to do it less, which is a lot of what's happening is things emerge into our consciousness. Oh yeah, did I email that person? I'm just going to do that real quick. So we have tasks that emerge into our consciousness that because they're not documented anywhere, we don't have an infrastructure where we're tracking the bigger picture of life and what needs to be done. We become unable to discern the difference between an emergent task, did I send that email, and an emergency task. Like, I don't even know what example to give, but most of the time, the vast, vast majority of the time, I believe the things that emerge into our consciousness, they're emerging into our consciousness. But because we haven't documented them, there's no infrastructure. It's we're afraid we're going to forget it, and we confuse the fear of forgetting for urgency. And
Mm,
so I'm just going to do this thing real quick.
it's a
And
really
away
good
we
point.
go. And our whole day is I'm just going to do this. So we're just like a pinball in a pinball machine doing whatever is either triggered by a tab open on our computer. When people have you got 45 tabs open in Chrome,
Hmm.
you're going to be nothing but a ping pong ball all day long, bouncing around.
Wow. So
Right?
it sounds like you're suggesting when that emerges and pops into your consciousness, instead of doing it, you should write it down on your to-do
Write
list
it down.
later.
You can write it down and you can say, and there's a time and a place where you might say, you know what, that emerged into my brain. Actually, I think it's going to give me some relief and I'm going to be better able to go back. I want to just send that email. I'm doing that. You see,
Mhm.
it's not
Mhm.
just me just pinging around based on what's on my inbox. And by the way, for everybody who has a lot of email, I want to give a specific recommendation. It's going to sound crazy when I say it, but I want you to do it anyway. The next time you go to your inbox and you feel completely overwhelmed, get out a piece of paper and make a list of the emails. I'm not joking. Take a pen or a pencil and make a list. You could put the person's name or the topic. Then you want to note which one of those emails is actually complex, requires you to go on a website or write up something or do something that's involved for you. Those are emails that require you to schedule time for them. What's most of us are doing is we're looking at them 45 times, having an adrenaline rush. I have no idea when I'm going to do that. And then we get drained off into other things. We'd be so much better off if we realized email is labor, it is work. And it really needs us to go through it separate from doing the email. We have to kind of take stock inventory. Like if this was your candy store, you're going to go in and find out, do we need more gummy worms and do we have enough Hershey Kisses, right? You want to find out for yourself, right? What is it that actually needs to be done, right?
Hmm.
Let me take stock here. My point is you have to have an inventory, no, an inventory of your life of some kind, some place to document these things outside of your brain, because this is an absolutely terrible storage container for tracking and planning what we need to do. And we'd be so much better off externalizing that and putting ourselves in a position where we can step back and figure out what's wise for me to do today. What am I as a sovereign being choosing to do? How do I want to move through my day versus just doing whatever emerges into our consciousness?
Yeah, I really like that approach. So email has been my major roadblock because just like you said, if I think I need to email someone, my instinct is to go to my email and do it. But then as soon as I open my email, I don't get anything else done that day because I have so much email. And so
It's the
I
Chronicles of Narnia. That's what happens. You open up a closet door and you get led into all these other worlds.
Yes, with lots of lions and scary things, right? But also things, enjoyable things, right? So that's, I mean, I think one of the reasons that people spend so much time on email is because of the dopamine hits from the positive things that come. So, like if someone invites you to give a talk or says a nice thing about an article that you wrote, then that gives you positive feelings. And so I think it makes sense that people are addicted to their email. I just don't understand how people can get anything done if they have notifications that pop
No,
up on their screen. I
please,
just I can't. So
please.
I yeah, so I
That's like if your notifications are on, you are, it's almost like you're leaving something that's zapping your nervous system in a negative way all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. So I keep my notifications off and I keep my text notifications on unless I'm in a
Mm.
meeting or something, because I think that when people text me, it tends to be more time sensitive often, or the kids will text me. And but you know, if I really want to get something done and concentrate, then I'll keep even my text notifications off and my ringer off. But for me, the biggest shift that has helped in my work is scheduling a block for email. And I know you said that it's a good idea to go through your inbox and triage and decide what you're going to do when. And I haven't really done that, but
Mhm.
I will definitely look into that. But just the major change that I made of scheduling 3:30 to 5 every day to do email has been really helpful. I don't always stick to it, and but it's like a way to try
Yeah.
to manage that and to be in control of my work day, because I can't control what comes into my inbox,
Yes.
but I can control when I look at it and deal with it.
And Sarah, a couple other things I want to say about email. First of all, when you make your inventory, you can decide you're going to do a series of emails, put them in an order where you don't jump between them because it's actually super inefficient. And by the way, every time we switch tasks, even though you're in email, it's each of them is like its own task. Every time you switch and then switch back and then you switch, all of those switches um require some resources because you have to now get reoriented around something else. And so if you only have a limited amount of attention and energy every single day, how much of your kind of pool of resources do you want eaten up in all that switching? So learning how to move through the email one at a time. And I like to think of it this way. I want to do one email at a time and I want to leave this person better than I found them. And knowing that that's my intention kind of safeguards me of feeling like I'm communicating in the tone I want to communicate in my
Hmm.
email.
Oh, I
That
like
helps
that.
me.
I like that.
Yeah, right.
Also, my mom, when she was working as an administrator of a senior citizen building, came up with a way of operating that she would only touch each piece of mail once. And this was back when there was snail mail. And I think that's brilliant. And it's harder to do that with the email, especially if you're doing what you're suggesting, which is going through it enough to triage and make a list of when you're going to do what, because then you have to touch each piece of mail at least twice.
Yeah.
And so I have multiple jobs that use my email inbox. So I have my research, so publications. I edit a journal. I run a public engagement initiative, and I have been involved with administration and of course my teaching. And some of them are in different email. I have three different email accounts, and so some of them I can relegate to that particular email account, like all of my student communication. But all the other ones are just in the other two inboxes, and I don't know what's going to come when. So one thing that I've tried to do, and I haven't yet figured out like a sorting system for emails that are related to each of those initiatives going to a different tab. That would be great. I can't figure out how to do that. But But I can do that in my mind. So what I do is I go through and I say, okay, now I'm just going to check things for my public engagement initiative. It's called the Jewish Language Project. And so I just work on Jewish Language Project emails. They're from 7 different people, and they require different mind space a little bit, but they're
Hmm.
all about the same initiative. So then once I do that, then I can go on to the things for the journal, and then I can go on to the and so and then there's all the social things and the things that I just delete. I try to be more organized in my mind. But then the problem is when you're doing that, then another email comes in, and then another email comes in. And so I wish there was I mean, maybe there is a way to just turn off emails from coming in. Or like they only come in every hour or something like that.
Yeah,
But I have
they're
to,
probably something you can do where you kind
yeah.
of, yeah, where you can disconnect it. But Sarah, you're describing you have the instincts that you're having around email. Those are worth following because you're recognizing I have to find a way that works for me to engage with my email, and that's experimental, right? You're experimenting, you're trying different things. When you were talking, it reminded me of something someone said to me one time, which was that she realized that when she was just in her email all day long, what was happening was other people's priorities were becoming her priorities.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so speaking of priorities, when you have worked as a coach and when you work in the academic writer space, do you talk about priorities and clarifying what are your values and your priorities and use those to help you make decisions about what to put in that order in the single file line?
That's such a good question, and it actually makes me want to be even maybe a little bit more deliberate about doing what you just described. I think we do it in a somewhat different way. Fundamentally, what we are practicing is aligning ourselves, and you could say with our values. Oftentimes I say like it's like with who you really are, or like what you really like, what like not just in your brain, but like in your body, like is the right path for you, this is the right action, is that there's always a version of you who shows up to work. And the version of us who shows up to work is often not, it's not really compatible with doing the work. It's not the version of you thought was going to be there when you made your heroic work plan. Sometimes we show up and we're like resistant to doing something that didn't seem like the day before. We're like, great, I'll do that tomorrow. But now, here in reality, faced with it, I've got resistance going on. We're really trying to support people to plan in a way where they're getting really specific about what they're doing whenever that is possible, so that when they show up in relationship to it, they're noticing what version of me is here right now, and do I actually feel compatible? Am I compatible with doing that thing? Um, and we do a lot of conversation around how do you want to feel as you work, and how do you want to feel after you've worked? Which is in some ways another way of asking people what they value, you know? There's it's all related. So we encourage people to practice aligning their behavior with the outcomes, the goals, the things that matter to them in their life, and with how they want to feel.
What do you mean by how you want to feel as you work? What are the
Well,
options for
okay.
that?
Oh, that's such a good question, because a lot of times we're looking toward, well, I just need to get this thing done, and we're so focused on the finish. By paying attention to how do I want to feel as I do the work? Like, how do I want to feel as I do the work? Do I want to feel stressed out? Do I want to be jacked out on caffeine? Do I want to be up all night? Do I want to be sitting and trying to write perfect sentences? Like, what's the impact of the way that I am working and approaching the work, including how I'm talking to myself about my work? What's the impact of the way I'm in relationship to my work on my well being and my experience of doing the work? Because I think in academia, there can be so much focus on the product and insufficient awareness of actually, in many ways, it's less about the product. It's like this journey for you, especially as a graduate student. It's just like you're on this whole quest and journey to earn a doctoral degree, we get so focused on finishing that we can actually feel like we didn't even enjoy the experience of getting a degree. And listen, is doing academic work enjoyable all the time? Absolutely not. But could it be more enjoyable? Yeah, it could be. So I really like to get people to think about how they want to feel as they work because it's a more positive way of helping people start to figure out how do I engage and take action without over engaging. Like perfectionism is a form of over engagement, getting really tight in the shoulders and working really intensely with so much pressure built up inside ourselves. We don't need to do that, but it's easy to get caught up in that kind of thing. I don't want to feel like this. I want to feel more relaxed and open. I want to experience more flow states. Okay, great. Now, how would I do that? When we start to inquire into how can I help myself feel the way I honestly want to feel, that is an invitation into figuring out how do I create conditions. Infrastructure is a really important part of creating conditions in which I can work in a way where productivity and well-being can coexist. And so I think in my work, I want everyone to see you are the change agent. You're the one who's going to change the relationship with your work because only you can do that. And I would say, I think it's hard to do by yourself. I mean,
Yes.
it's possible, but a big part of what is needed, and this is really not just needed. Honestly, I think a lot of the suffering and pain that is on earth is that people aren't in community where they feel safe and loved. And that's academia is, you know how it is. It can be without the warmth, without the fuzzies.
Yeah. Yeah. So that your idea of not like that it's hard to do something on your own really calls for an accountability partner.
A lot of times it does. And honestly, I think at the heart of it, what so much of we are needing is we are needing to be around other humans, other people's limbic systems, and particularly being able to co-regulate the presence of other people's being there, especially if you can be in an environment that is caring, that's kind. In our co-working community, we joke that there's probably no other group on planet Earth that uses emoticons as much as we do because we just have a good old time. Like we've warmed it up and we have a sense of humor. But we're recognizing that the innermost piece of being able to change anything about your work habits, being able to change anything about yourself, any patterns, any you want to procrastinate less, you want to be less perfectionistic, you want to have more tools and more ability to like show up and engage with your work in a different way. First of all, everybody can do this. Everybody can. But I think it's really hard to do without seeing it embodied in other people and being in an environment where you're allowed to be in the struggle that you're presently in. We're always starting with the version of us who showed up to work. That's always the starting point because that's your truth. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm irritable and I've got a headache today. That's important information because though the irritability and the headache are making me less compatible with something I would have been more compatible with if I was in the mood I was in yesterday when I made the plan. I have to now change my approach and my tactic and maybe the task altogether, given my present reality. But that adjustment I make is bringing me into right relationship with the work and the work in right relationship with me. That we're constantly learning how to observe the version of us who is present. Notice, is the version of me who's here right now compatible with doing this thing I plan to do? Yeah, I'm compatible. Great, go for it. Actually, I'm kind of off. I think I need a sandwich. I need a drink of water. I need some Advil. I need a little break. Or wow, I'm just like not compatible at all. You know what? I'm gonna like work on my references for a little while because the resistance is high. I'm gonna try to come back in half an hour. That we don't just have this all or nothing mentality that I either follow the plan as I created or forget it. We realize that we have to dynamically flow. We have to have that flexibility you mentioned earlier to realize that we can't always just rigidly do what we planned. We also have to deal with the lived reality of being human and that we're not really fully in charge of our moods and our well-being. And things happen, but we
Yeah.
can keep adjusting.
Yeah, totally. And one of the other people we interviewed, Evyatar Zerubbabel, who wrote a book called The Clockwork Muse, talks about A time and B time. A time is the harder tasks that take more thinking. And then the B time is things like references and even, email. And so that's why I put my email block at the end of a work day rather than the beginning, because I am better at the beginning of the day. I do my best writing in the morning. And so I try to keep blocks on my calendar for the morning
Yes,
to get a lot of that work done. But it sounds like you're saying sometimes you have to be flexible about what is A time and B time, and because you might just be having an off moment or hour or day, and so you just
absolutely.
switch it up for that particular chunk of time.
Yeah. Like, so Sarah, the question would be, let's say it's A time and you show up and you notice technically it's A time, but I can't do that kind of work right now. That happens, you know? And I want your listeners to know, if you're in a pocket of time right now where you've been more avoidant, you've been struggling more, what I would do is I would take a week where all you're going to do is you're going to practice starting and get a book of matches, like an old, and strike the match. And if you sometimes we miss the first few times because we're not giving enough force. Feel the energy of that, like that moment where it sparks. We're trying to just get some sparks. If you do 100 starts and you only spark 10 times, amazing. Sparking is starting to happen. Focus on starting. How do I start? How do I start? Try different ways of starting. If everybody would work on starting and building their starting muscles and had like a repertoire of ways to start, you'd procrastinate less, you'd avoid less, because it's the starting that's so hard. It's like the first 5 minutes on the treadmill, even though I never go on treadmills anymore, but I have. And the first 5 minutes was like hell. But somehow it's like, all right, fine, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
have to get ourselves over the threshold into the work when the resistance is high and have the courage to step forward in the presence of that discomfort, which is not the same as ignoring the fact that you've got like a screaming migraine, or you're not listening to your body that's saying it's not time to work now. That's a discernment that you can only develop through practice.
Yeah. So how does it work at the academic writers space? Tell us what happens in one of those sessions.
So we offer co-working sessions 7 days a week where people get onto Zoom, and there's a community of people from around the world in a wide range of studies, grad students, people in postdoc positions, um, professors, people doing all kinds of academic research and writing. And we show up to get work done for real live there in session together. There's a facilitator who has an opening talk for about 10 minutes designed to support people to get clarity about what they're doing, to settle in and make contact with themselves, like arrive and prepare themselves to move in and do small, specific things where possible. And every single week in our community, we have a theme. We have 26 themes. We do them everyone twice a year. This week, our theme is satisfaction. So the facilitators are having these opening conversations about how can we work in this session right now, live here, so we can feel satisfied. And it turns out the things that you need to do to feel satisfied are the same things that help you actually get work done, to help you cross things off the to-do list in a way that is still honoring of your humanity. So we have these cool conversations. We send people off to work for 45 minutes. Everyone turns off their camera. You actually don't have to be on camera. You don't have to participate, but you can participate. People turn off their cameras and they work. And then we come back for 10 minutes in the middle and we check in and we say, how did it go? What worked? What didn't work? We like readjust ourselves, get clear again. What am I doing in the next 45 minutes? People then declare in the chat what they're going to do, and then they go off and we check in how'd that go, and people ask for coaching, and people share wins, and people share struggles, and people communicate with each other in the chat. And when people are sharing and they have something difficult going on, people run hearts over their screen, and people are honest about, I've been there, that was me yesterday, I feel you, I have had the same fear, I've struggled with the same doubts, you're not the only one. because that is the truth, is that it looks like other people aren't as doubtful of themselves or they have it more together, but that's only because we compare our insides to other people's outsides. So we're trying to create an environment where it's time to get live work done right now, but let's do it in a way where we're talking about how we can work in ways that work so that you get a little pep talk at the beginning from the facilitator. And you, if you like, you can try to implement that conversation right now live in the work. And I
Mm.
think that's why we are seeing real and feeling real transformation and change in people is because they are coming into work. Some people are coming to multiple sessions a day. They're in an ongoing practice of working in a way that actually works, that really
And
works for them.
are they always there to do writing, or are they sometimes there to plan out a syllabus or do some of their service or public engagement work?
We say this is a container for you to do anything that matters to you. People are applying for jobs, people are doing laundry, people are making dinner, people take naps. So the nickname for our community
What?
is TAWS, TAWS. So we have a saying that a TAWS nap is a nap you take inside TAWS, and because you're in the TAWS community, we have declared there's no guilt for TAWS naps. And the interesting thing about co-working in community is that you start to see people beginning to trust more and more that it's safe and wise and actually deeply nourishing of their ability to actually show up and work effectively when they take time off. You start to see people growing in their trust and their authentic practice of stepping away from the work, and then they reap the benefit in their work later on because you see people doing it. It's easier to trust that you can let go too. You don't have to be on all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just surprised that people nap. Like, why would they join the session if they were just gonna nap? Couldn't they join the next session?
It's like, well, it's because people want to be part of the conversation in the community. And then they realize, wait, I'm actually not compatible with working right now. I'm
Mhm.
exhausted and I
Uh-huh.
could push through, but actually I'm going to take a nap and I'm going to come back and I'm going to work. And they may not even sleep. Just the idea that like, I need to shut it down
Yeah.
because you know how sometimes you just have to turn off your phone. You have to power it down.
Yes. Yes.
A
Yeah.
lot of times we just need a temporary little shutdown, and
Yeah.
then more of us comes back online and is available to the work.
Mm. So this is really the flip side of having an accountability partner or team or group is being kind to yourself. That there's no shame in not getting done what you were said you were going to get done, or deciding that it's B time and not A time or whatever. But having other people there who know what that's like is a helpful thing for people.
And it can help you. And people say, you know what? Take the break. You
Yeah.
know, you can
Yeah.
let that go. And it also helps people learn to do a really important skill that we don't teach in grad school. And it's really a heartbreaker to me, which is that you have to learn how to work through the developmental trajectory of academic writing as is unfolding for you in your process. You're capable of writing some really crappy prose right now that conveys some basic ideas. Great. Do that. Get it out of you. We like to call it the crap it up method. Just crap it up. Just let go. Just get out of you what you can so there's something basic that exists outside of you. It's so much more efficient than the writing a sentence and crossing it out and editing and just, obsessing over a paragraph before you move on. Don't do that. It's a complete waste of time. Doing what you're presently capable of doing, even though you wouldn't want anyone else to see it, right? Anne Lamott in Bird by Bird, which is a wonderful book, even for academic writers. It's about writing. Anne Lamott says that she's always afraid that she was going to go out and die in a car accident and someone was going to see her, as she called it, a shitty first draft. Someone was going to see this like terrible draft on the coffee table and think that's what she intended for publication.
Yeah, that is a fear. I totally get that. We're almost out of time, but I just want to know what's your take on the 500 words a day method, or a certain number of words or pages every day.
I'm not a huge fan of pages per day because the work varies so much If that works for somebody, I'm not going to take that away. I prefer to have people set up goals that are limited in terms of the scope of what you're asking yourself to do, that's more content related. Write a rough paragraph explaining the relationship between X and Y. And I might underline rough, rough, rough. Just drafty bullet point. Sometimes we call it a baby draft. It's a more surrendered, abandoned of standards draft. Get it out. Then I might come back and be like, all right, I'm gonna do the toddler version of the draft, the middle school version, I'm gonna let myself progress it to the point a lot of the writing that we do, by the way, everyone, you can progress it to a point for in a given day. And the best thing to do is to let it go and come back another day and progress it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Allison Miller, thank you so much for this excellent advice. I feel like everyone just needs to listen to your interview here and attend your workshops, the academic writer space, and they'll immediately become a better writer and a better scholar, and also be both productive and well.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
The Peer Review podcast is produced and hosted by Sarah Bunin-Benor and Mira Sukharov. Talia Ehrenberg is assistant producer and editor. The music is written and performed by the Galactic Ambassadors. Support for this podcast comes from a faculty grant from Hebrew Union College. If you would like to sponsor an episode, you can reach us at peerreview@huc.edu. You can join the conversation on Facebook at Peer Review, Cultivating Creativity and Fulfillment in Academia. Thank you for listening.